Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
So, Nicki, we were joking before we came back on air here. Last night, I was scurrying to go meet a friend of mine through the JW Marriott here at Indy, and I saw out of the corner of my eye you very clearly working on something in the corner, and I did not have the light bulb go off that thing that you would be working on would be very relevant to my day, which of course it is, until this morning when I saw the story you wrote with Mark Maskey that the Commanders are no longer going to be playing at FedEx Field, because FedEx is exercising basically an early termination option in their contract that was triggered available by the sale of the team. Mm-hmm. As best as you can tell us in terms of your reporting, how did all of this go down, and how surprising is this?
I think it's kind of surprising and not surprising, right? Surprising sort of by the timing. You know, there's 2 years left, $15 million, which is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of, sort of the
it certainly would help to have $30 extra million when on the day you announced $75 million worth of renovations.
I would love an extra $15 million
yes.
in my bank account. But, relative to, the total value of a lot of these naming rights deals and, the amount that can change in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge dent, but to lose your naming rights partner when you have 6, 7, 8, however many years left they have at the stadium in Landover, and also need a stadium rights partner at the new stadium, wherever they're going to be. They're in somewhat of an uncertain position, So I think the timing was surprising, especially because they had gone 25 years with FedEx. But given the history of, sort of Dan Snyder, his history with the minority owners, there was litigation, good number of
so much
well
litigation.
documented, yes. And even though Dan Snyder is not the owner of the team, as you mentioned, the sale of the team triggered a provision that would allow FedEx to opt out early from the deal, and they chose that. I believe the deadline was the end of last year, and they took it pretty much up to the deadline, and I think it did catch some in the team by surprise. They thought they were on pretty good standing. So they decided to pull out, and now they have an old stadium with no naming rights partner, and
a new stadium
wherever it'll be.
Somewhere.
A lot of uncertainty there.
Yeah,
with
we are waiting on news from the RFK bill, which is working its way through Congress right now. Your colleague Sam Fortier has been one of the people that's been all over that, so I'm sure WashingtonPost.com will have much coverage from Sam and Nicki's colleagues there as that gets finalized. So. I guess like the number one question I thought of after reading the piece this morning is like, could this actually wind up working out for them? Like, is there a way that, because as you mentioned, it's $15 million, which in modern naming rights deals, which are a bit all over the place, but still they could get more for that if the stadium wasn't in such a precarious space where they're moving out in a couple of years. But I don't know whether they negotiate some kind of deal where it includes naming rights for the new stadium or whatever.
Right.
Like, is it feasible for them to go like, you want to know what? Maybe they just did us a favor.
Yeah, theoretically. I mean, that's about 7.6 a year. It's 2 years, so $15 million total. And I think the average for naming rights nowadays, there's only two NFL stadiums that don't have a naming rights partner. It's Lambeau Field and Soldier Field. So it's the two oldest stadiums don't have naming rights partners. But the reason a lot of teams do it is, it's a lot of capital, and you need that to kind of reinvest into the stadium and maintain repairs and whatnot. So a lot of these deals, the average for the ones that have them, I think it's around like 12.5 to 13 a year, which is pretty much double what they, were getting from FedEx. So yeah, if they can land another stadium rights partner and kind of get it in that ballpark, sure, it could be beneficial, because there was going to be a lapse no matter what. This deal expired in 2026. They are not going to be out of the current stadium by then to move into the next one. So there was going to be a lapse. By the way,
pause. What do we call it for right now?
I'm just calling it the stadium in Landover.
The stadium in Landover.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. I mean, like, I covered the Broncos for 6 years. Mm-hmm. Not their original, but the second naming rights sponsor, Sports Authority, a former, apparel company, way back when.
Yeah, I think any kid who grew up playing sports has been to a Sports Authority and just gotten lost in there.
Yeah, they went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. So, And that stadium went without a naming rights partner for, I want to say, 2-3 years until they landed on Empower, a retirement company. So, it depends on the market. It depends on what they're looking for. I think ideally they would probably want to do what Tennessee is doing, and they managed to get Nissan on a 20-year sponsorship, and Nissan is carrying them through the rest of the life of the current stadium, and then will also be the naming rights partner of their new stadium that opens in 2027. So I would think that'd be sort of the ideal scenario. You get a long-term partner, you're getting a pretty sizable return each year, more than you are now. It's just and you got to think Nashville is a smaller market than DC, but you look at the state of FedEx Field, and new ownership, to its credit, has put in a good bit of money already to try to make some improvements, but it is what it is, right? So I think all that factors in, and we'll see if they're able to pull one off. If you don't get one that carries over, maybe you get a shorter term one. I think ideally you'd like to have one, or you find other ways to sort of make up that lost revenue that you would get from one if you can through. You see a lot of teams now like sponsor parking lots or different areas,
Sure.
To get creative. But that revenue that helps a ton for teams. Especially with the size of these stadiums and the amount. Just the capital repairs can be massive.
Right, and if they're trying to make a better fan experience, I wonder if parking comes down and you're shifting revenue and
Right.
how you make it. Can you make it
Right.
more off corporate sponsors than off your fans
Sure.
directly? And if you're missing a $7.6 million chunk of change, that makes that business model a little bit harder.
Yeah, and it is a lot of money for any normal person. It's in the grand scheme, it's not a ton, but yeah, it definitely helps to have a naming rights partner, no doubt.
Yeah, Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post is with us. These $75 million upgrades to mostly FedEx, but I think that there's some that got earmarked for Ashburn as well.
For updated amenities at the facility.
What kind of difference does this realistically make for fans and maybe more importantly on the day that the NFLPA stuff comes out again for players?
Yeah, and this $75 million. This includes the $40 million that was also announced earlier.
So $35 million new.
New, and
We've now
all
reached
of this,
the end of my math skills.
Same. And all of these upgrades will be completed before the 2025 season. So they're putting all these upgrades in this offseason and next offseason, in between concerts and whatever else they have going on at the stadium and facility. So I think a lot of it will be noticeable. I think they've made changes to parking and trying to make it easier to get in and out of the stadium. They made some already with sort of the traffic flow things. They've made upgrades to premium seating areas. There's like a new field tunnel club. And I think it's maybe more subtle things that you can't see. Like there just needs to be some structural improvements to the stadium, which if you've been to any game, there are some improvements that can be made to stop a leak. Because a new one appears at every game, it seems.
Yep.
And then certainly at the facility, the NFLPA came out with their second annual player report cards where players vote on how facilities are, how working conditions are for teams. And, it's not really a surprise that the Commanders finished last for the second year in a row. And this is not a knock on ownership, but more a reflection of just the state of their facilities.
Yeah, the way I worded my take on that, because I guess that's the business I'm in. Reluctantly, I'm in the take business, Nicki. It happens to all of us.
Happens to the best of us, yeah.
And also me. So my take on it is that it is a reflection of the amount of work to be done, not on the current ownership group. These votes were taken in October.
Yes. And how little work was done by the previous regime.
Yes, and both on football and on ownership.
Yeah.
How if we're forecasting a year from now, how much can they jump in a year versus how much of this is like a 5 to 10 year project?
They hope to have all of these upgrades in this chunk done before the 2025 season. And they're going to be. It's a lot of money, but it requires a lot of money to just make even incremental improvements to the stadium. And you want to do enough to make it as decent as you can in that facility. For fan experience, you got to make changes for players too to make it better. I think they do take to heart these NFLPA surveys, and they have made changes since the last one to try to improve that. We saw a lot of it with training camp and like a separate area for families so they can kind of sort of congregate after practice in a more private area. So I think they'll continue to make smaller changes while still keeping an eye on the long term and where they want to be. after this.
Nicki, Jhabvala, Washington Post, with us for another few minutes here on the Team 980. All right, General Combine. This is the question I'm asking every Washington person that sits in that chair, which is when you not even quarterback stuff or whatever you're hearing on the football side yet, just when you have conversations this year and you meet someone new and you're like, I cover Washington. I know what that was like under the previous regime, and everyone just kind of gives you that.
Stare.
Yeah, like, oh, you have a great life, don't
Yeah.
you? How different are the conversations this year?
The first reaction from literally everybody I've talked to is, oh, I really like their hires. I think Dan Quinn will be good. Or if it's from, agents or other media that have dealt with him, oh, you're going to love DQ. Adam's really good. Like, I think he'll be really good for that team. So, yeah, it's a complete 180. It's still kind of built on hope and potential, and you hope this sticks, you hope it works, you hope they win. But it is definitely a lot more optimism than years past when, oh, sorry, you're covering your 5th federal investigation, that type of thing,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely different vibes. Outside of today where you're dealing with, like, naming rights and PA surveys, it has kind of almost felt sort of like a normal team. I'm so scared of saying anything. But, like, yeah, we've been covering football and coaching stuff, and who are they going to draft and quarterback and, like, yeah, wild. So, yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see how it pans out. You always hope they win and they can
the
stick
week is
around.
young.
Yeah.
The regime is young.
Right. This is the happiest time of year in the NFL.
Yes. No,
happiest.
it
Everybody's
is.
a Super Bowl contender right now. So
100%. One trend that I think is interesting this year, and as someone who covers not just Washington, a team that is kind of participating in this trend, but also someone who has great feel around the league. So many coaches are skipping out now, and it kind of started with Kyle and Sean a couple years ago. Washington has none of their assistants here, and DQ basically came to do media. I think he did tell the Junkies this morning that he's like going to sit on some meetings, but like he's out of here pretty quick. I think he's on a plane probably back right now.
Right.
So what do you make of that? And is that a missed opportunity where coaches like Andy Reid are like, no, of course I'm here. Like I have to talk to the players.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of has their own approach, obviously. And, I mean, Washington still has a huge contingent here. But I think the value of the Combine, I don't know if it's definitely become more skewed to a TV production. It's spread out. Meetings are later at night just to accommodate TV and to get these workouts.
Well, now they have
more
them in the
prime time.
mornings, which is a thing that never happened before.
Right. So, like, the quarterbacks are pushed back in the week to make sure people stay and to, more eyes. It is a business for the NFL, as everything eventually becomes one.
Sure.
So it's become less about, I need to see these players throw or work out, because a lot of these drills, as we all know, are not all that translatable to the football field. The interviews are very short. It's like speed dating in a lot of ways. You get 15 minutes. A lot of these kids don't even know what team they're talking to because they're on their 30th of the day or something. So it's so informal, and they do it by Zoom now, a carryover from the pandemic.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So they can do it in Zoom, they can do it in person. So
Okay.
like they have coaches at home that can be streamed in.
Oh, wow, okay.
So some coaches just see it as a benefit of, let's save the money on the trip. We get to talk to the players, and then we'll bring them in on our top 30s and get them more. I think the biggest benefit still to teams is the medical.
Right.
And players, they go through the gauntlet with every bit of testing. And that's where the real value is, I think, to teams, because it's the workouts. Okay, fine, you can watch them on TV. More and more players are not really doing all of them.
They're on tape, which I always just get a great chuckle out of, because I just imagine, like, in the late March, some coach sitting in his office rewinding the 3-cone drill, and you're like, this is what we're doing to select football players? But, like, I guess.
I mean, a good 40 time can definitely put you on the map. I mean, Troy Apke, 5 years in the league.
Yeah.
Off that 40 time that impressed Dion, so, like, doing something right. But, like, I think teams are kind of realizing this has become more of a production. They have new ways, more efficient ways of getting it done. And I think they find it better to get these players in person, bring them in. And a lot of teams, they do it on top of that. And, it's different for every team. I do think you're going to start seeing fewer teams send coaches. And I do wonder if fewer players are going to continue to participate unpaid if that's
Yeah.
going to become a thing.
I think it's interesting how it is almost, people mess this up all the time. Oh, we went the full 360, full 180. It's like, no, this is actually going a full 360 because the combine started as a medical test.
Right.
As a way to not have players have to travel. And it's like,
Right.
okay, all the doctors, and then they're like,
One-stop shop.
yeah. Hey, they're here. Let's work them out.
Right.
Let's do this. And now it's like the medical side, there's still so much benefit for the teams. Although I do wonder
Sure.
if players are going to be like, no, you can't take
Right.
me or leave me. Like, when do agents start pulling that card? But it really, because of the nature of the drills and technology, and also, I think, we talked about this on our podcast and stuff with Logan last year a little bit, like the GPS data available now.
Yeah.
I'd rather know what you run in a football game than what you run in a 40. And
Right.
so the amount of data available is just completely changing the evaluation process, and everyone's just chasing the best way to do it. And as more technology
Yeah.
emerges, that becomes less and less clear of what that optimized
Right.
thing is.
Right. There's more data, and this event has become more of a TV production,
Right.
frankly. And will players continue to agree to do it? I mean, I know Marvin Harrison, the report that he's not going to do it. Not everybody can do what Marvin Harrison is doing.
Right.
He is a complete player, and he's solidified in where he's going to, or is a team going to turn away Marvin Harrison Jr. because of that? No. But, a player on the edge of going on a certain place might. So it still has value for some players.
And last but not least, because I feel rude not asking you at least one football question,
Okay,
because
let's
you
hear
do
it.
cover football on top of all the other things that you do. Do you have you this week developed any strong feelings in terms of where you think they should go at 2? I know they haven't decided yet, so to ask you what you're hearing about that is that's silly. They don't know yet. But for what you've
Yeah.
heard from scouts, agents, execs, whatever, do you have any strong feelings?
No, my mind changes pretty much every day, sometimes twice in a day. Sometimes I'm like, develop Jaden. I think he would be good. Some days I'm like, throw everything at the Bears and try to trade
Yeah.
up. I don't think they would. I don't think the Bears would trade down. It's just my feeling. Some days I'm like, all right, trade back, get another pick. Let's
Yeah.
kind of build up the rest. Other days I'm like, let's go get Kirk Cousins. Let's bring him back for a couple of years. Let's go.
Hey, you missed Kirk.
so-
Some of us got to
I
cover
mean,
Kirk. You didn't get Kirk.
I know. I feel like I was ripped off.
You never know what
so
you get on a
I
Wednesday.
know. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of having a number 2 pick, gobs of cap space, a ton of picks. They could literally go any which way, which for talk radio, not great because I don't have a definitive answer or opinion for you.
I will say, as the person hosting a show that has to do mostly draft content for 2 months, it is phenomenal.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly don't know. I don't know what I would want. in that
I'm with you. I
situation.
change
And I'm-
every single day.
Yeah, and I'm very glad I don't have to be the one picking.
Yeah. Although if we were picking, we'd have a lot more data. Because part of
Yeah.
the reason I don't feel like I know is I haven't sat down in a room with Jaden Daniels or Drake May or Caleb Williams.
Sure.
I don't know how they process football information. I don't know how they process all kinds of stuff that just makes it impossible to have a strong feeling. Does that
Yeah.
stop many people from having strong feelings? No, my YouTube comments are a dumpster fire. But it is impossible to look at it just with the tape. And also, I think the other part of this that I really struggle with is I don't know what they're building offensively.
Right.
Cliff
Yeah.
going
There's still such
hey,
a
this isn't
mystery.
the error
Yeah.
aid. Okay, well then what is it? Because it
Right.
seems like it could go any direction.
Right. And I think part of it too is even when you do know all that, even when you do have every bit of data available to you, it's still a crapshoot in many ways.
Right.
I mean, Adam Peters would know as well as anybody with
Yes.
Trey Lance and
And Brock Purdy on the other side
and
of
Brock
that coin.
Purdy on the other side. Yeah. So there is a bit of luck to it. Even when you know all that you do, I mean, there's not a direct translation from the college game to the NFL game. Certainly parts of it, but it is tough. A lot of it depends on is that player going into the right circumstances with the right coach, the right scheme. It takes a perfect storm, and it's hard to hit on. I think this is Patrick Mahomes, every bit of good that he's done for the league, just otherworldly player. Of course, every team wants to find that next guy, but he doesn't exist. I think there will be a lot of great players that will be different, but I think the standard is so absurd. And not saying he will be the highest. That's not it at all. There will just be different super high players, but chasing that has made it even harder. I think it's definitely created more urgency, especially in the development of young players. If you're not good in year one, you're cast aside.
Right.
The lucky ones get a second chance, like Jared Goff. Coaches don't even get a full season to work with these guys, so everybody is chasing that.
Yeah, what you
diamond
just said
in the
about
rough.
Pat is the thing that I think I'm coming out of this week with, which is I don't know whether it's worth chasing him because he's one of one. And maybe Caleb's the next guy in that tree where,
Maybe.
5 years from now, Pat's still going to be 32. So, insanity
Crazy.
there. But, the idea that if you get the quarterback, you got it. No, if you get Mahomes,
Right.
you got it.
Right.
But,
Right.
would you rather then be the Lions or the 49ers with a very well-balanced roster? And,
Right.
the 49ers are Jake Moody missing or getting an extra point blocked
Right.
away from maybe winning that game.
Right.
That whole game changes on that. So would you rather chase the 49ers model or would you rather chase
Right.
hitting one guy and having him erase all the rest of your problems?
Right.
And, the Super Bowl rings would tell you should go, it's worth it to chase Pat.
Right.
But, people are like, well, what if you land Josh Allen? And I'm like, well, he's not as good as Patrick Mahomes. And the question is, do you need to be as good as Patrick Mahomes? Because if
Right.
that's the case, then good luck.
Yeah, if that's the case, then nobody else is going to be able to win. And I
Shut the league down
firmly
for a
believe
decade.
that you don't need to be as good as Pat Mahomes to win. I
Right.
think there have been a number of really, really good teams with really good quarterbacks, just not to that level.
Right.
And the good teams figure out how to do that. I think that's Baltimore is a perfect example. I know they haven't won it all
Right.
with
But
Lamar,
but it's the same
way
model
they've
the Eagles used to
adapted
make the
that.
Super Bowl. It's the same model the
Yes.
Niners used to make the Super Bowl.
Yes.
All the teams that the Chiefs have beaten, and the occasional team
Yes.
like Cincinnati, who has beaten Kansas City, the only one to do
Yeah.
it really in the playoffs. At that point, Burrow was excellent, but he
Yes.
wasn't Pat.
Right.
But their roster was sick otherwise.
Yeah. Just the importance on one position is what makes this league so unique anymore.
Yeah.
Andy Reid wasn't regarded as Andy Reid like he is now. He's more like Kyle Shanahan is now.
Exactly, yeah.
Until he drafted Pat Mahomes. Now, Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Correct.
But you need that guy. Not always to that level, but you need a guy. And it's, we see it in Washington, of course.
Yes, where they
So,
haven't had a guy.
how many
and-
years?
I
Too
mean,
many
it depends
years.
on who you consider the guy. Was it Doug?
Right.
You could make an argument that Rippon and Williams weren't the guy, and they won Super Bowls
Right,
anyway.
Right, exactly. No,
which is
it's yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it takes a perfect storm, you
yeah.
know, and I think the league is a copycat league, but often to its detriment.
And never forget that the Chicago Bears' all-time leading passer is Jay Cutler.
Yikes.
They've been around 100 years. Yeah. Could be worse. You could be the Bears. All right, that's Nicki Jhabvala, WashingtonPost.com/sports to read her work. Or some of you are subscribers to the Post, and they throw the newspaper at your door. Nicki here with us on Radio Row in Indianapolis. Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, sits in that chair next.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.